Hi everyone, welcome to Draw with Jan channel. In one of my previous videos, I had shown you how to draw a portrait in easy steps. In this video, I'm going to show you how to shade it using graphite pencils. I have used Derwent Graphite pencils for this. If you're a person who loves sketching and shading, I would strongly recommend that you invest in a good set of graphite pencils, preferably a range of at least 24 pencils. Now coming back to the shading, I have split my video into 5 parts because I wanted to cover as much detail as possible. In part 1 of the video, I'm going to show you how to shade the eye. Based on my experiences, I have tried to cover the do's and don'ts of shading the eye. Hope you find this video useful. Let's get started. Let's first begin with the don'ts. I'm going to show you the common mistakes that people typically make while shading the eye. I'm showing you the eyebrow first. The most common thing that people typically do is draw an outline for the eyebrow and then fill it in. Drawing a harsh outline makes it look so unnatural. Now moving on to the eye, people tend to focus on the darker areas first and try to get the outline done at the very beginning. This way, you don't have much scope to blend in the shades later, and it becomes extremely difficult to bring in realism into your drawing. For the eyeball, understanding the details in the iris, pupil, and the lighting is extremely important to make it look real. People tend to ignore these details and just shade the pupil dark. For the eyelid, people tend to draw a harsh line which needs to be avoided. When it comes to shading, while this kind of shading is good for a simple sketch, if you're looking for a realistic drawing, this doesn't help. Don't just use 2 or 3 shades of pencils, rather go for a wider range of pencils which will really help you cover the tiny details if you're looking for realistic drawing. Also, another common mistake that people do is not keeping the pencil sharp enough. Keeping your pencil sharp will really help you cover the tiniest of detail with so much ease. Not blending the shades properly can make the drawing look very patchy and unnatural. Typical mistake for the eyelashes is to draw single harsh lines. This looks okay but not real. Now let me show you the do's of shading. For the eyebrow, I'm going to start with a HB pencil and mark the area. Look at the original picture. There is no visible outline, so while shading, we need to make sure we are not drawing any visible outline either. Pay attention to the varying tones and shading in the original picture and try to follow it to the extent you can. The shading gets lighter from now on. As you can see, the shading is not smooth. You need to bring out those tiny strands of hair as you shade. The first layer of shading for the eyebrow is done, and I'm now moving on to shading the area around the eye. I'm using 6H pencil for this. Marking the eyelid as I'm shading. Mark the outline for the eye as you're shading, but do not make the outline too obvious. I'm using a HB pencil for the outline. Be very careful while you're drawing the outline for the eyeball. You need to make sure you leave enough space for the lighting. Also, if you notice, there is no clear outline there. It's just a layer of shading. so make sure you're not defining a harsh line for the eyeball. The shading in this area is a bit darker if you look at the reference picture. However, we'll begin with a lighter shade and we'll slowly add layers to get there. Now again, with the pupil, be very careful, because if you notice there's one small bit of lighting over there and you need to make sure you leave that space blank. I'm still using a HB pencil for the first layer of shading. Now that we have completed the first layer of shading for the eye, I'm going to get back to shading the area around the eye. Using a 6H pencil to begin with, I've also completed the first layer of shading for the face and the hair. I'll cover that in one of my subsequent videos. In this video, I'm just going to focus on shading the eye. I'm now using a HB pencil for the next layer of shading. As you're shading, please pay attention to the direction of the strokes. Always remember not to apply too much pressure while you're shading. If you apply pressure, it becomes really difficult to add layers later on. If you observe the reference picture, you can notice at least 4 or 5 different tones of shading. Once we complete the first layer of shading, we can use different ranges of pencils to achieve these finer details. using an earbud to blend it and give it a smooth finish. Going for a darker shade now, using a 2B pencil for the next layer of shading. Using earbuds again for a smooth finish. Now using a 6B pencil for the eyelid. As you can see, this area is really dark and you need a 6B or a shade darker than that for the eyelid. I'm using 6B for the first layer, and later in my video you will notice that I will also be using 9B for defining the eyelids very clearly. Be careful with the pupil. As you can see, I've left a little tiny spot there for the lighting. While you're shading the eyelashes, make sure not to draw harsh lines. Pay attention to the length, the place where it originates from, the tone of shading, and try to replicate the original picture to the extent you can. For the shading, there are no hard and fast rules on what range of pencils to use. For this portrait, for the lighter shades, I have used ranges 3H to 9H. For the midtones, I have used HB and 2B, and for the darker shades, I've used 6B or 9B. For blending, while there are multiple options, I find Earbud the most convenient for portraits because it allows you to cover the smaller areas in detail. Also, make sure to blend it before you define those eyelashes or before you define any outlines. I'm using a 9B pencil here for defining the outline. Whenever you feel like there are harsh lines in your drawing, just take one or two ranges lower than the shade you originally used and shade around that area to blend it smoothly. Now using a 9B pencil for the eyebrow. Switching to a lighter shade now. As you can notice in the reference picture, there are tiny strands of hair visible, and we need to bring in those details. I'm now going to add some finishing touches to the eye. Almost done with the shading. There are still some finishing touches and highlights to be defined, which I will cover in part 5 of the video when I get to the full portrait drawing. I will be covering nose, lip and hair in part 2, 3 and 4, and in part 5 I will be covering the full portrait shading and highlights. Hope you found this video useful. Thank you, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos.